Alright, I'm going to do a review of a 4-issue miniseries that came out in 1990 through Dark Horse. Written by Frank Miller, illustrated by Dave Gibbons. Frank Miller, of course, did Dark Knight Returns, and Dave Gibbons was co-creator of and artist on Watchmen. Okay, and this is a miniseries that it's one of the few that I've actually had quite a few requests to actually do. Number one man being Poet Skinny. Who respectfully called me out in a video about, being very flattering. And so, yeah, this is actually a series that I'm not so much intimidated to do. It's just I really didn't know how to approach the review after doing these for 2 years and talking about comics for decades now. So just to jump right on into it, our lead character in the book is Martha Washington. Okay, Give Me Liberty is actually an Eisner Award-winning book. I actually bought this in July of 1991 after I had graduated and took off to Baltimore and lived up there for, 3 weeks, a month. And I got them all at once, so I got to sit down and read them all at once. And my gosh, I was blown away. This is Americana, this is satire, this is politics, this is socioeconomic classes, this is race, and it's all done in a almost ridiculous manner, with Martha Washington being our eyes in this America of the future. Much of the story takes place, we're already past it. Came out in 1990, 1995, 1996, 2005, 2012, we go on and on. And so the thing about this comic that is genius is that it's written by Frank Miller, who, as I understand it, is a high school graduate, went straight to working on being an artist in comics. He was even, I guess what would you call it, like an intern under Neil Adams and so forth and so on. And then you have Dave Gibbons, who's an Englishman, not even, not American. So what we have there is Frank Miller, who, in my eyes, had something to say, seems to know a lot about politics. And then we have Dave Gibbons, an Englishman, who gets the perspective of being outside of America and getting to look at us as America, okay? If you follow me, what I'm saying. Frank Miller has put politics in his comic books before. Dave Gibbons did it also in, for example, Dark Knight Returns. You can read that as Batman is an anarchist in Ronald Reagan's America. Dave Gibbons got to look at America and American comics and such and so forth in Watchmen. A little bit of a stretch, trying to say it was, tied to politics and stuff. But if you read Watchmen, you kind of get what I'm saying. All right, so the magic of Martha Washington, while you're sitting here and talking to me and stuff, is that let's just talk about this as a straight out comic book. You can just get this book, read all 4 parts. Okay, Martha Washington starts out as a young black child in something called Cabrini Green. And what that is that was almost like a prison-like project. They called it the Green. Poor, single mom in the home, had a high intellect, could mess around with computers, had one teacher that believed in her named Donald, and then, you had your, I don't know what you would call them, but, there was a very bad man living on the floor and stuff like that, who liked little boys, and Martha Washington was spared being molested by him because mom dressed her like a little boy, hoping that, nobody would want to, nobody would mess with her where she's a girl, if you follow what I'm saying. Alright, so basically she escapes from the Green by like sort of flipping out. There's a fight that she has to do. She's a survivalist. That's the thing about Martha Washington. She is a survivalist. She feigns being mad, insane, so she gets put into asylum. And then due to budget cuts with the government, all the insane people are, of this insane asylum are just put out on the streets. And Martha Washington, being, computer savvy, works ATMs and stuff. All of this, like, I don't know, she's not even 17 yet when all this happens, And then she joins P.A.X. And P.A.X. is more or less a satire of our military, of the American military, where if you join, it doesn't matter if you were a murderer, rapist, whatever, you get a clean slate and you go fight wars for them. And the big war that's kind of starts out in this, that she ends up joining and stuff, takes place in the Brazilian jungle, and our Constitution has been messed with to where, uh, a president can serve more than one term, and cattle and beef have been outlawed, which has caused a big civil war with some corporations in the southwest region of America, and they're fighting in Brazil. Okay. Now, before I get on too far and everything like that, I don't want to ruin this stuff. But what we do is we go through there, we see what Martha Washington's going to, and then we see what's going on in politics. And our great president, President Rexall, who just served term after term after term, they tried to, there's an assassination attempt, okay? There's a Saudi Arabian firebomb that reduces the White House to a blazing shell, incapacitating President Rexall and incinerating Vice President Cargo, check out the words, Attorney General Sphincter, and every member of the scandal-plagued Rexall cabinet. And who becomes president? Secretary of Agriculture. Alright? Just because he was home with a fever. He didn't die. And all of a sudden this man tries to make America best. He tries to undo evils. The Apache Nation get their land back. He signs a paper, declaring they can have their land back, some land in Central America. He starts trying to do all these great things. And meanwhile, that's where Martha Washington joins P.A.X. Okay? Let me tell you some other things that's going on in the world. Okay? We have a president who rules like a king. World leaders condemn America while citizens are divided. American corporations have stake and stance in the execution of war. The Constitution is abused. Ice caps are melting. Education is used as a propaganda tool. And, it's almost like what's been set up in this comic book is America is Babylon. And that is reflected on the inside covers where we have, America looking like a puzzle put together. Alright? So as we walk through this, just so we don't go all over the place here, we have the president, we have Martha Washington joining the military, things just like in the real world. She's fighting her war in the Amazon. You can see all that brutal stuff, paratrooping in. She's a girl. Not only is she having to fight the enemy, she has to fight those around her. Because people who join P.A.X. are pretty much rapists and criminals. And she gets hit with mustard gas, if I remember right. Okay. This war is being fought over beef, cattle, so that fast food restaurants think they have the right. This is America to, sell beef and do what they need to do. And, that's part of the symbolism I'm going to talk about in a minute. And, of course, Martha Washington cries one more time from the devastation, and then that's the last time she cries. Her hair starts turning yellow from the mustard gas, and the ridiculous war goes on. She talks more and more about it. And she deals with a lot of things. And of course, Martha Washington has a commanding officer that she finds doing some illegal war activities, and him being a rich white man in the military, more or less gets to, Martha Washington has no power, and he has all the power, and he's going to make sure that Martha Washington earns her keep, and he's going to send her on the most dangerous missions that she can, hoping that she dies. Okay? So, the war goes on. She fights some more war. She gets, Fat Boy Burgers. This is their tank. There's people in there, in the mouth and stuff, shooting down. Martha Washington also gets to go fight over the gay Aryan offshoot of Nazis who have taken over Reagan's Star Wars program come to fruition, which is a phallic symbol. When you look at it, sends her off into space, and she just keeps surviving and thriving. And along the way, she finds out that the government is using children as guinea pigs because they're psychics. And with all the wires sticking out of these mutated heads and everything like that, it reminds her of her doll when she was a kid of Raggedy Ann. So we have space missions and clones, and this gives you an idea of what's going on. Then we find out the Apache Nation. Our president, who tried to do good, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. ends up screwing over the Apache Nation again. Instead of like using paint for ceremony and war paint for war, and certain muds and whatnot to protect them from the skin, the oil refineries and everything that's been on their land and forever have no safety codes, and they're all getting poisoned, and they have to use paint and stuff to hide the gruesome gray of their skin, and they're dying off left and right. And they're mad again. America has one more time done it. And Martha Washington and Raggedy Ann end up right smack dab in the middle of the Apache Nation that's rising. Meanwhile, all across America, things are just breaking down left and right. And our president has become a drunk who is signing papers to nuke certain parts of our country, and he's just oblivious. He gets drunk, they have him drink and drink and drink, the pressure of being president and being criticized and all the pressure of it. He's just a drunk, and he slits throats of his people of his Secret Service and people in there, and does not remember it. And he's signing papers in blood, more or less, that allows them to use Reagan's space cannons as our evil lieutenant commanding officer wishes. All in about to wipe out Martha Washington. And then we get introduced to Surgeon Generals, and her bout goes on and on. Martha Washington. Now, without giving away the ending and things like that, like if we just read it as a straight comic book and stuff, what happens is America is fractured, and we actually see how the nation ends up becoming divided in a bunch of civil wars. And some of these are ridiculous. I mean, this is satire, but it's close to the truth. Things have gotten so bad, we have newscasters committing suicide on the air. It gets to be heavy stuff. We have our president who was assassinated. Turns out that the Surgeon General was able to keep him alive, and his whole big thing is that guy never resigned. He's alive. His brain is alive, and he's claiming to still be president. In the South, lesbians have taken over, and in New York, the mayor has gone creepy nuts, and he's declared New York its own state. We just sit there and watch America go down. Martha Washington is captured and brainwashed, and they try to make her something she's not. We have the weapons pointed down at Earth. We have the Surgeon General with an agenda. We have the President wanting to come back. And the Secretary, the President, the acting President, ends up meeting a fate close to just like Caesar. Okay? And when you read it, that'll make sense. And the whole time, Martha Washington is still at the mercy of her white lieutenant, who's older. And with leaving it at that and stuff, that's one way to read it if you hung in there with me. A straight comic book all the way through. And then this is where it gets into layers. This is why I was sort of intimidated to talk about all this. Okay? Just wanted to make sure I did it right. In the 80s, when Oprah was on the rise, I remember being a kid, and I remember seeing some show. I don't know if it was a 2020 show. I don't know if it was a regular show. But they said that the person, the people in America who have the least chance of being successful because they have too much against them is the African American female. And what is Martha Washington? The African American female. Now, I didn't understand that when I was little, and I just refused to believe it, and I know that's, at the time, that was probably a reality, and things have hopefully changed since then. And then we get into the political aspect of it. Corporations having their fingers in there. The Civil War in this story that's going on in Brazil over meat. Exactly who's the cattle? Is it the cows? Or is it the people that serve the war? It gets symbolic. Martha Washington seems to be the only sane person in this trying to survive, and she rises. What is she going to overcome? And then there's other obvious things with race. The fate of the rich white hunter, commanding officer that keeps her under her thumb, meets a fate that a lot of African Americans, black people if you will, sort of met. But it's not obvious until you think about it that way. A lot of things switch and turn. And then what does it say about America? Or is America a Babylon that's just going to fall like the Tower of Babylon? it's influenced by like works of art like Caesar and stuff. You get in there and some of this seems familiar. And that's just Give Me Liberty. That's the first 4 part. The rest of Martha Washington's journey is not as complex as that. These are a little bit more straightforward. They came out with Martha Washington Goes to War, and this reminded me of Atlas Shrugged. Okay, if I'm remembering right, you know, miniseries. Still Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons. You know, all the same characters, where they are, what's going on. Martha Washington Goes to War is a good one. Happy Birthday, Martha Washington, where she kind of meets a symbol of America, of a superhero. You can read these things as straight comics, or you can delve in there and see what they're really saying symbolically. Everything's a metaphor. Martha Washington Stranded in Space. Martha Washington Saves the War, and here's where we go further into the future. And these books you start seeing that it's getting away from the political satire and it's talking about what is freedom. And then when we get to Martha Washington Dies, and the end of Martha Washington Saves the War, and then the one shot of Martha Washington Dies, the question comes up that gets pretty deep, and it's a bit more obvious now, is what is freedom? Is freedom each individual can really handle? If we had freedom, complete freedom for what it is supposed to be, which, you know, comes off to me like pretty close to anarchy almost. If we had complete freedom, could we really handle it? And that's Martha Washington. That's Give Me Liberty, and a little dabble in the rest of Martha Washington. If you want a strong female character, if you want something that you can do as light reading, and if you want something that you can deconstruct and really get talking into politics and race and socioeconomic class and the Constitution and Americana and about anything that's a trigger button that you don't want to sit and talk about at a dinner table, this is the book for you. Alright. Shout out to Poet Skinny. This one was for you. I hope I did well. Alright. Later.